My boss fired me to give my position to his daughter, but Monday changed everything. The rain tapped against the window of my tiny apartment, each drop mirroring the heaviness in my heart. It had been exactly 3 days since Mr. Thompson called me into his office, his usually warm demeanor replaced by an uncomfortable stiffness that made the air thick with unspoken tension. I remembered sitting there, my hands gripping the arms of the chair so tightly that my knuckles turned white, as he delivered the news that would change everything. "Emma," he began, avoiding direct eye contact while shuffling papers on his desk, "this hasn't been an easy decision." His words hung in the air like a storm cloud, heavy and ominous. "After careful consideration, we've decided to make some changes in the department structure." I nodded automatically, though my mind was racing through countless possibilities. Had I made a mistake? Were my recent campaign proposals not up to par? The questions swirled in my head, but I remained silent, waiting for him to continue. He cleared his throat, finally meeting my gaze with what appeared to be genuine regret. "You've been an incredible asset to this company, Emma. Your dedication, your creativity, they've all been remarkable. But..." He paused, and in that brief moment, I felt my stomach drop. But sometimes, business decisions aren't just about merit. They're about family. The room seemed to tilt slightly as his words sank in. Family. His daughter Claire, fresh out of college with a shiny new marketing degree, had been interning with us for the past 6 months. While she'd shown potential, her work had never come close to matching the standards I'd set during my 5 years at the company. Yet here we were, and I knew exactly where this conversation was heading. "I'm promoting Claire to your position," he continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "Effective immediately. I'm sorry, Emma. This isn't personal." "Isn't personal." The phrase echoed in my mind long after the meeting ended. How could it not be personal when it was my career, my livelihood, my identity that was being taken away? I walked out of that office feeling like a ghost, already invisible to the company that had once celebrated my successes and rewarded my hard work. The weekend passed in a blur of tears and sleepless nights. I couldn't bring myself to tell my parents yet. They'd always been so proud of my achievements at the company. Instead, I spent hours staring at my resume, wondering how to explain this sudden termination to future employers. Would they see me as damaged goods? As someone who couldn't hold on to a position? Monday arrived too quickly, bringing with it a sky so gray it matched my mood perfectly. I dressed mechanically, putting on the same power suit I'd worn during my last successful presentation, the one that had earned us our biggest client yet. Maybe it was superstition, or maybe just desperation, but I needed every ounce of confidence I could muster. As I stepped into the familiar lobby of our office building, something felt different. The usual buzz of early morning activity seemed muted, and several colleagues avoided my eyes as I made my way to the elevator. When the doors opened on my floor, I found myself hesitating before stepping out. This space, once filled with my energy and ideas, now felt foreign and unwelcoming. The morning unfolded in a haze of final paperwork and awkward goodbyes. Some coworkers offered sympathetic smiles, while others studiously avoided my gaze altogether. I packed up my personal belongings, each item carrying memories of late nights, breakthrough ideas, and professional triumphs. The framed photo of my team celebrating our latest success caught my eye, and I had to blink back tears before carefully wrapping it in tissue paper. Just as I was about to leave for what I thought would be the last time, Sarah from HR approached me with an unusual request. "Emma, could you wait a moment? There's something important we need to discuss before you go." Her tone was strange, not the formal, detached professionalism I'd expected, but something warmer, almost excited. Curious despite myself, I followed her to a small conference room. Inside, instead of the standard termination paperwork I'd anticipated, I found several documents spread across the table, market analysis reports, financial projections, and something that looked suspiciously like a business proposal. Before I could ask what was going on, Sarah began speaking, her words painting a picture that would alter the course of my life forever. "You see, Emma," she started, leaning forward with an intensity that demanded my full attention, "we've been watching your work very closely these past few years. Not just your immediate supervisors, but executives from other departments, even competitors who've seen your presentations at industry events. What they saw wasn't just talent, it was vision. A unique approach to marketing that blends emotional intelligence with cutting-edge strategy." She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. "When word got out about your situation, several key players in the industry reached out to us. They wanted to know more about you, about your methods, about your potential. And then yesterday evening, something unprecedented happened. Sarah slid a document across the table, her hands trembling slightly with excitement. This is a formal invitation to present at next month's Global Marketing Summit in New York. Not as a representative of our company, but as an independent consultant. Several major firms have expressed interest in potentially partnering with you if your presentation meets their expectations. The room seemed to spin as I processed this information. Me? Presenting at one of the most prestigious marketing events in the world? It sounded impossible, yet the documents in front of me were real: official letterhead, detailed itinerary, even preliminary talking points for my session. But why? I managed to ask, still struggling to comprehend the magnitude of this opportunity. Why would they choose me, especially after? That's the thing, Sarah interrupted, her smile widening. In this industry, word travels fast. The circumstances surrounding your departure have created quite a stir. People are angry on your behalf, yes, but more importantly, they're impressed. Impressed by how you've handled yourself through this whole ordeal with grace and professionalism. Impressed by your track record that speaks for itself. And most of all, impressed by the innovative approaches you've developed that many believe could revolutionize certain aspects of digital marketing. She pointed to a stack of folders on the corner of the table. These contain letters of support from clients you've worked with, testimonials from colleagues who've witnessed your growth, and detailed analyses of campaigns you've led. Some of these came directly from our archives, but many were submitted independently by people who wanted to vouch for your capabilities. As I flipped through the documents, names of industry leaders jumped out at me, people I'd admired from afar, whose work I'd studied religiously during my career. Each page contained glowing praise, specific examples of my impact, and most surprisingly, suggestions for how my methods could be applied to current market challenges. What they're offering isn't just a speaking engagement, Sarah explained. It's a platform. A chance to showcase your talents on a global stage, to connect with potential partners and investors, and possibly even launch your own venture if that's something you're interested in pursuing. The weight of this opportunity pressed down on me, both thrilling and terrifying in equal measure. For years, I'd poured my heart into my work, believing that loyalty and dedication would be enough to secure my future. Now, faced with this unexpected turn of events, I realized that sometimes being forced to leave what's familiar can open doors to possibilities beyond imagination. Before I could fully process everything, another figure entered the room, Michael Chun, the CEO of Innovatech Solutions, a company I'd always considered a dream client. His presence alone sent shockwaves through my system, but when he began speaking, my world shifted yet again. Ms. Carter, he began, using the formal address that somehow made the moment feel even more surreal. We've been monitoring your work for some time now. Your approach to integrated marketing campaigns, particularly your ability to blend traditional strategies with emerging technologies, aligns perfectly with our vision for the future. He gestured toward another set of documents. We would like to offer you a consulting contract, not as an employee, but as an equal partner in developing a new marketing paradigm. Your insights, combined with our technological resources, could create something truly groundbreaking. The terms they proposed were staggering, not just financially, but in terms of creative freedom and influence. They weren't offering me a job, they were offering me a seat at the table where the future of marketing would be shaped. The irony wasn't lost on me. Being fired had somehow positioned me for greater opportunities than I'd ever imagined possible. As the day progressed, more revelations emerged. It turned out that my dismissal had triggered a chain reaction within the industry. Competitors who'd secretly envied our company's success under my campaigns began reaching out, offering collaboration opportunities and expressing interest in poaching other team members. Clients I'd nurtured relationships with started questioning their contracts, citing concerns about maintaining the quality of service they'd come to expect. Most surprising of all was the internal reaction within my former company. Several senior executives, including some I'd never directly worked with, had begun quietly organizing resistance against Mr. Thompson's decision. They argued that replacing proven talent with nepotism risked losing not just me, but potentially dozens of other valuable employees who might follow suit. Throughout these revelations, I maintained my composure, though inside I was a whirlwind of emotions. Anger at the injustice of my termination battled with gratitude for these unexpected opportunities. Fear of the unknown wrestled with excitement about the possibilities ahead. Most profoundly, I felt a shift in how I viewed myself, no longer just an employee, but a force to be reckoned with in my own right. The afternoon brought yet another surprise, a call from a journalist specializing in corporate ethics and workplace dynamics. She'd caught wind of my situation and wanted to feature my story in an upcoming article about meritocracy in modern businesses. While part of me recoiled at the idea of public exposure, another part recognized the potential to spark meaningful conversations about fair practices in hiring and promotion. As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the city skyline visible from the conference room windows, I found myself facing a decision far more complex than simply accepting or rejecting these offers. This wasn't just about finding a new job, it was about defining who I wanted to be in this industry, about determining whether I would let adversity shape me or break me. The people around me, from Sarah's enthusiastic support to Michael Chen's strategic interest, represented more than just professional connections. They symbolized a network of believers who saw value in my work beyond any single company's walls. Their faith in my abilities, especially during such a vulnerable time, created a foundation upon which I could build something extraordinary, if I had the courage to seize it. Yet amidst all these revelations and opportunities, one crucial element remained unresolved. While the professional landscape had shifted dramatically in my favor, the emotional toll of my termination still weighed heavily on my shoulders. Trust, once broken, doesn't mend easily, and the betrayal I'd experienced at the hands of someone I'd respected ran deep. As I prepared to leave the office that evening, perhaps for the last time as an employee, I realized that the true test lay not in accepting these new opportunities, but in how I would navigate the complex emotions surrounding my departure. Could I channel my hurt and disappointment into fuel for growth? Could I maintain my integrity while stepping into roles that might put me in direct competition with my former employer? The answers to these questions wouldn't come easily, but as I stood there, surrounded by documents representing possibilities I'd never dared to dream of, I understood that this moment marked more than just a career transition. It marked the beginning of a journey toward discovering my true worth, separate from any title or position. And somewhere in the midst of this turmoil, I sensed that the greatest transformation wasn't happening in boardrooms or through business deals. It was occurring within me, reshaping how I viewed my place in the world and my power to create change. The rain had stopped by the time I finally left the building, replaced by a cool breeze that carried hints of autumn. As I walked toward my car, I noticed something I hadn't seen in days, a sliver of moonlight breaking through the clouds, casting a path of silver light across the wet pavement. It felt symbolic somehow of the journey ahead, uncertain, challenging, but illuminated by possibilities that grew brighter with each step forward. Back at home, as I spread out all the documents and proposals across my dining table, I allowed myself to really feel the enormity of what was happening. The fear was still there, lurking in the corners of my mind, but it was accompanied by something else, a spark of determination, a whisper of hope that maybe, just maybe, being pushed out of my comfort zone was exactly what I needed to discover my true potential. The phone calls and emails continued throughout the night, each one bringing new details, new considerations, new possibilities. Some offers came from unexpected quarters, former clients turned friends, industry contacts I'd helped mentor, even competitors who'd once dismissed my ideas. Each message added another layer to the complex web of opportunities unfolding before me. What struck me most wasn't just the number of options available, but the genuine enthusiasm behind each one. These weren't mere professional courtesies, they were passionate endorsements of my work, heartfelt expressions of belief in my abilities. People I'd helped, inspired, or simply connected with over the years were stepping forward to support me, creating a safety net of goodwill that felt both overwhelming and deeply comforting. Yet amid this whirlwind of activity, practical considerations demanded attention. Financial stability, healthcare benefits, retirement plans, all the elements of security I'd taken for granted as an employee now required careful planning. The freedom of independence came with responsibilities I'd never had to consider before, and the learning curve promised to be steep. My parents' reaction, when I finally mustered the courage to share the news, surprised me. Rather than concern or disappointment, they expressed pride, not just in my professional achievements, but in how I was handling the situation. Their support, unconditional and unwavering, reminded me of where my strength truly originated. It wasn't in titles or positions, but in the values they'd instilled in me, resilience, integrity, and the courage to pursue my dreams regardless of obstacles. As the night wore on, I found myself drawn to my laptop, opening documents and spreadsheets with a focus that surprised even me. Numbers that had once represented mere performance metrics now told stories of potential, of lives touched, of communities engaged. Campaign strategies I developed became blueprints for broader applications, their success rates transforming from historical data into promises of future achievements. The realization hit me gradually, like dawn breaking over a dark horizon. This wasn't just about recovering from a setback, it was about redefining success on my own terms. Every challenge I'd faced, every obstacle I'd overcome, had prepared me for this moment. The skills I'd honed, the networks I'd built, the reputation I'd established, all these elements were converging to create something entirely new, something uniquely mine. Looking around my apartment, I noticed how the familiar spaces suddenly seemed filled with possibility. The desk where I'd spent countless nights working on proposals now appeared as a command center for innovation. The bookshelves lined with industry publications transformed into a library of inspiration. Even the view from my window, previously just a backdrop to daily routines, now seemed charged with promise and potential. As exhaustion finally claimed me, I fell asleep surrounded by documents and dreams, my mind buzzing with ideas and possibilities. The path ahead remained uncertain, but for the first time in days, uncertainty didn't feel like a threat. Instead, it pulsed with energy, with the thrill of creation, with the promise of reinvention. The morning light revealed not just a new day, but a new chapter waiting to be written. One where being fired wasn't the end of a story, but the beginning of something far greater. Something that would require every ounce of courage, every lesson learned, every connection forged. Something that would test my limits while offering limitless possibilities in return. And as I brewed my morning coffee, watching steam rise like hopes taking flight, I understood that the true measure of this experience wouldn't be found in titles or paychecks, but in how it transformed me. In how it forced me to confront my fears, embrace my strengths, and trust in the power of authenticity over conformity. The journey ahead promised to be challenging, exhilarating, and profoundly transformative, and I was ready to take that first step. The weeks that followed were a blur of activity, each day bringing new challenges and revelations. I threw myself into preparing for the Global Marketing Summit with an intensity that surprised even me. Late nights turned into early mornings as I meticulously crafted my presentation, weaving together years of experience, innovative ideas, and the raw emotions of my recent upheaval into a narrative that was both professional and deeply personal. As the date of the summit approached, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought me here. The pain of being fired had transformed into something else, a driving force that pushed me to excel, to prove not just to others but to myself that my worth wasn't defined by a single position or company. Each setback had become a stepping stone, each disappointment a lesson in resilience. The day of the presentation arrived, and as I stood backstage at the grand conference hall, I could feel the weight of everything that had led to this moment. The room buzzed with anticipation, filled with industry leaders, potential partners, and curious observers. Among them sat Mr. Thompson and Claire, their presence both unexpected and telling. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and walked onto the stage. The lights were blinding at first, but as I began speaking, everything else faded away. My voice filled the room, steady and strong, as I shared not just marketing strategies but stories of perseverance, innovation born from adversity, and the power of authentic connection in business. The audience was captivated, their attention absolute, their energy feeding my own. When I reached the part about my departure from the company, there was a collective intake of breath. I didn't dwell on the negative aspects, but instead focused on how the experience had opened doors I never knew existed. I spoke about the importance of merit over nepotism, of creating opportunities rather than waiting for them, and of using setbacks as springboards for growth. The applause that followed my presentation was thunderous, lasting long after I'd finished speaking. As I stepped off stage, dozens of people approached me, some offering congratulations, others seeking advice, and many expressing interest in collaboration. Michael Chun was among them, his eyes shining with approval as he extended an invitation to discuss our partnership further. But it was what happened next that truly changed everything. As the crowd began to disperse, Mr. Thompson approached me, his face pale and his hands trembling slightly. Behind him stood Claire, her expression a mixture of shame and admiration. "Emma," he began, his voice barely above a whisper, "I owe you an apology." He looked around at the gathered crowd, at the executives who had witnessed my triumph, before continuing. "What I did was wrong, not just professionally, but personally. I let family loyalty cloud my judgment, and in doing so, I lost one of the brightest talents our industry has ever seen." Claire stepped forward then, tears streaming down her face. "I never wanted this," she said softly. I begged Dad to let you stay, to find another way. Watching you present today, seeing what you've accomplished despite everything, it makes me realize how much I still have to learn. The moment was surreal, the culmination of everything I'd been through. But instead of feeling vindicated or triumphant, I felt something else entirely, compassion. Looking at them standing there, vulnerable and remorseful, I understood that forgiveness wasn't just about them, it was about freeing myself from the burden of bitterness. "Thank you for your apology," I said, my voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside me. "It takes courage to admit when you're wrong, and I appreciate your honesty. As for the future..." I paused, considering my words carefully. "Let's focus on building something positive from here. Maybe Claire and I can work together in some capacity, not as rivals, but as colleagues learning from each other." The months that followed saw remarkable changes. I launched my own consulting firm, partnering with several major companies while maintaining creative independence. Claire joined my team, not as my replacement but as an eager intern ready to learn from scratch. Under my mentorship, she blossomed into a talented marketer, her natural abilities finally given room to grow without the pressure of expectations. Mr. Thompson's company, meanwhile, underwent significant restructuring. Several executives who had supported me during my departure took key leadership positions, implementing policies that prioritized merit and transparency. Our professional relationship evolved into one of mutual respect, with our companies collaborating on projects that benefited from our combined expertise. Looking back now, I realize that being fired was never the end of my story, it was merely the beginning of a far greater chapter. The pain and uncertainty I experienced became the fuel for transformation, pushing me to discover strengths I never knew I possessed and to build connections that transcended traditional boundaries. Today, as I sit in my office overlooking the city skyline, I'm surrounded by a team of passionate professionals who share my vision of marketing as a force for meaningful connection. Our campaigns don't just sell products, they tell stories, build communities, and create real change. And while success is measured in various ways, awards, client satisfaction, financial growth, the true measure lies in the lives we touch and the barriers we break. Sometimes, late at night when the office is quiet, I think about that rainy day when everything changed. I remember the fear, the anger, the uncertainty. But mostly, I remember the hope that somehow persisted through it all, the belief that even in our darkest moments, there exists the potential for reinvention, for growth, for becoming more than we ever imagined possible. Life, I've learned, rarely follows the paths we expect. Sometimes it pushes us out of comfortable spaces, forces us to confront difficult truths, and challenges us to rebuild from the ground up. But within those challenges lie opportunities, not just for professional advancement, but for personal evolution, for discovering our true strength and purpose. As I close my laptop and prepare to leave for the day, I glance at the framed photo on my desk, the same one I packed up that fateful Monday morning. It's joined now by new pictures, new memories, new triumphs. Yet its presence reminds me daily that sometimes, losing everything is exactly what we need to find our true selves. The journey continues, as all journeys must. There will be new challenges, new obstacles to overcome, new heights to reach. But armed with the lessons of the past and the support of those who believe in my vision, I step forward with confidence, knowing that every ending carries within it the seeds of a new beginning. And so the story doesn't truly end here, it simply evolves, like all great narratives do, into something richer, deeper, and infinitely more rewarding than anything I could have imagined when I walked out of that office on that gray Monday morning. For in the world of possibilities, every closed door opens countless windows, and every setback contains within it the promise of something extraordinary waiting to unfold.